Nishi, if you could please stop sharing the slide. So I would actually now like to talk about our main attraction for the morning, and that is Indra Nooyi. And Indra is the former chairman and CEO of PepsiCo, and a company she ran from 2006 to 2019. And it's a Fortune 50 company with operations in over 180 countries. In this role, Mrs. Nooyi was the chief architect of Performance with Purpose, which is PepsiCo's pledge to do what's right for the business by being responsive to the needs of the world around us. As part of the Performance with Purpose, PepsiCo was focused on delivering sustained growth by making more nutritious products, limiting its environmental footprint and protecting the planet, and empowering its associates and people in the communities that it serves. During her tenure, PepsiCo grew net revenues by more than 80%, and their total shareholder return was 162%. Before joining PepsiCo in 1994, Mrs. Nooyi held senior positions at the Boston Consulting Group, Motorola, and ABB. Currently, Mrs. Nooyi is a member of the board of Amazon.com and sits on their audit committee. She is a member of the International Advisory Council of Temasek, an independent director of the International Cricket Council, and is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She's also a Dean's Advisory Council member at MIT School of Engineering and a member of the MIT Corporation. Additionally, she is the class of 1951 chair for the study of leadership at West Point, where she helps enhance the ability of both the Department of Behavioral Sciences and Leadership and the US Military Academy to fulfill the mission of developing leaders of character. Mrs. Nooyi has received many prizes, accolades, and honorary degrees over the years. In 2007, the government of India awarded her the Padma Bhushan, the country's third highest civilian honor. In 2007, she was named an Outstanding American by Choice by the US State Department. In 2019, her portrait was inducted into the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery. She holds a BS from Madras Christian College, an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management in Calcutta, and a Master of Public and Private Management from Yale University. Mrs. Nooyi is married and has 2 daughters. Moderating her session would be Seema Mody. Seema is a global markets reporter for CNBC, focusing on the intersection of foreign policy and Wall Street. Seema's recent focus has been on reporting on the wide-ranging impact of the pandemic on business, jobs, and the broader economy. She's conducted a number of high-profile CEO interviews in recent months, where she's pushed executives to outline their survival strategy to shareholders and employees. Prior to working in New York City, Seema anchored CNBC's Worldwide Exchange from London and worked in Mumbai, reporting on the expansion of India's capital markets. It's now my absolute privilege to welcome onto the grand stage Mrs. Indra Nooyi and her moderator, Seema Mody. Over to you, Seema and Indra. Welcome.
Thank you, Arun. Hi, Seema.
Hi, Indra. BJ, thank you so much. And Indra, it's a pleasure to speak with you today.
My pleasure, too. Thank you for inviting me to TiEcon.
It's great to have you here. Let's start macro, Indra, and the state of the economy, what you're seeing in terms of the effect of COVID-19. You led a high-performing, diversified consumer giant through a major transformation. You also have a seat on Amazon's board. That's certainly given you a unique lens into the state of the consumer, how things have changed due to COVID, from online deliveries to food preferences. So I'm very curious, Indra, what trends stand out to you?
Well, COVID indeed is an incredible disruptor in the whole world. It's disrupting life as we know it. It's shutting down large parts of the economy. It's causing tremendous angst amongst many of us. It's creating a sense of loneliness. It's got so many issues that it's opened up. At the same time, it's also creating a lot of new opportunities. Technology has really come to the front in this COVID days, whether it's online shopping, digital learning, whether it's more entertainment through your iPad as opposed to watching a television because there's nothing interesting to watch on television. I think what you're seeing is a technology-driven disruption which is accelerating trends that might have happened anyway, might have taken 5 or 10 years. It's happening in 5 or 6 months. And then you're seeing a lot of industries have to remake themselves, whether it's hospitality, travel, offices, restaurants, all of them have to remake themselves. They may have had to do it anyway, but I think technology is going to accelerate the transition aided by COVID. So in many ways, I think technology is going to look at COVID as their friend, which is unfortunate, but that's the reality.
And as you said, the shift to online certainly accelerated due to COVID-19. It seems like it's created this arms race to get households the goods they need as fast as possible. Do you think some of the non-traditional players that are trying to enter this space, from Walmart, among others, that are trying to emulate what Amazon is doing, will be successful, and will the customer be receptive to this?
Well, the customer is going to have choice. That's the amazing thing about the race that you're seeing today. The customer no longer has to depend just on one vendor, can go to Walmart.com, who can partner with anybody, Target, Kroger, everybody's starting online partnerships and delivery partnerships. So I think the customer is going to be very well served. What's interesting is that online is going to take away a lot of the problems consumers had when they were shopping. I mean, I'll give you a story of my own life. I wanted to buy a lilac sweater once when I had a dress. I went to about 6 stores. They didn't have a lilac sweater. They didn't have it in my size. So I couldn't get a lilac sweater. Just dawned on me that I just get on Amazon. In less than 2 minutes, I had the lilac sweater I wanted, in the right shade I wanted, in the right size I wanted. It came to me in 2 days. So you sit there going, look at all the time I wasted going from store to store looking for a lilac sweater, and I couldn't get it. So what online does is it gives you everything at your fingertips. Thanks to you guys in the technology world. It's given everything to you in your fingertips. And what COVID did was basically say, if you're a senior in particular and you don't want to leave the house, you need Amazon. And if you're anybody else who wants to shop for every basic necessity by a swipe or a press of a button, and then selectively shop for non-essentials, also online, there's online services that are going to make your life much easier. So I think we all came through COVID saying, oh my God, if Amazon didn't exist, what would we do? Seriously, everybody I've talked to say, without Amazon, we couldn't have survived COVID. So in a way, I say, this has been a great boon for everybody. All of the online services have been a boon. The only thing I don't like is giving my data to so many people, but that's a whole different discussion on data privacy and all of that stuff.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be a topic that continues to gain more traction. I'm curious, if there will be behavioral changes over time for the consumer. As you say, these platforms have made it so much easier to get that lilac sweater, to get shampoo, light bulbs, whatever it may be. If we become more impulsive over time, if that changes buying, spending habits, if you will.
Well, I think you spend on more things that you don't really need, because it's like a treasure hunt when you sit with your the mobile device and start ordering. You order a lot more than you need. And I watch my kids use Amazon because the boxes pile up in our front door. Sometimes I wonder why they need all those boxes and boxes of stuff, but something catches their fancy and they buy it. So I think one is going to make people buy things they never even thought they needed. And then they may not even open the boxes, but the buying experience was an experience unto itself. I think the downside of all of this is that social interaction, when you get to the store, when you actually engage with other shoppers, etc., or the store people, that's going down. And the cocooning that comes from staying with your device at home is going to go up. So we have to find ways to say, look, there's got to be reasons for you to go out. There's got to be reasons for you to interact with real humans and not just interact with them via Zoom or, a social media. To me, that is even more problematic, because if you take away that human interaction, for people like us in the older generation that only knew that, this is not going to be a big issue for us. But for younger people who've always used technology ubiquitously in their life, I worry that they are engaging even more with technology. They are consuming a lot more entertainment through technology, and they're going to lose that sense of community and the warmth of meeting people. And I just worry about that. And I hope that post-COVID, everybody goes back to interactions and human-to-human connections in person.
I completely agree. The impact on the fabric of society, right, whether it's temporary or permanent, of course, remains to be seen. Since we're speaking to so many entrepreneurs here, Indra, I'm curious, beyond deliveries, some of the cutting edge technologies that you are seeing right now that you really see a lot of potential in, whether it's drones, artificial intelligence, where do you see most opportunity right now?
Well, I think we have to start with what are the fault lines that COVID has opened up? And how can technology go in there and really provide solutions? So let me talk about some of the areas. I mean, if we talk about all of them, we could be spending all morning and it'll blow your agenda. But let's start with education. I think K-12 education needs to be reimagined. Right now, what happened when we went to online learning, we kludged together some approach to online learning. Nobody has thought through a very intelligent way to bridge online and offline, the right interventions for kids who are falling behind, how to use the right tools and technology to visualize three-dimensional objects for kids. We haven't done any of that. So there's a whole opportunity to deploy a suite of tools. So it involves people in the tech world coming together and saying, I don't want to sell an app or a tool or a technology. I want to sell a real solution that makes a difference in society. In a way, what I'm challenging people in Silicon Valley is stop thinking of the next $100 million. Think of the purpose that you want to deliver. You know, what's the real purpose of why you're doing what you're doing? How can you reach out to your other colleagues in the tech world and say, let us together reimagine K-12 education. Just as you race to bring an app to the market, why don't you race to reimagine K-12 education? I think that's a glaring hole that needs to be addressed. Let's talk about other things. We're talking about telemedicine being the panacea. You know, we have some early successes with telemedicine, but we have to think through the whole healthcare field to talk about how can we deploy technology, low-cost equipment, so we can reduce the cost of healthcare, so our health insurance costs come down. I mean, why does healthcare cost as much as it does here? And why is it in other developing markets, less privileged people don't even have access to healthcare? How can we address this as a societal issue? So Seema, I come from a place of purpose. I come from a place which says, what COVID has done is expose fault lines that existed in our society. If we don't use technology to solve and address these fault lines, we've lost a big opportunity and we failed to make humanity better. So I'm sincerely hoping this is going to open the door for entrepreneurs to come in and say, let's get together as groups and solve real societal problems. So we are looked at as generationally, we made an impact as opposed to just made money. I mean, let's say net worth is not the same as self-worth. So I want you to focus on self-worth, not net worth.
Good advice, Indra. And I'd like to continue that discussion, shift from the pandemic to another topic that has evoked a national discussion, and that is the advancement of women in the corporate workplace, specifically minority women, women of color. Still, while we've seen slow progress, the numbers suggest that there is more room for growth and opportunity. What's your advice to women who have a foot in the door? They're already working for an Uber, an Airbnb, a Google, but they want to understand how to get themselves promoted and move to the top, because I feel like that still seems to be an area that needs to get more attention.
Well, I think it's way beyond just a quick discussion on women. You know, preparing for this meeting, I read the Trust Radius 2020 Women in Tech report, which is, recently released. My God, the numbers just freak me out. It's simply unacceptable. Women get 2.3% of the VC funding. 2.3%, a whopping 2.3%. I think everybody in Silicon Valley should be ashamed of that. All tech entrepreneurs should be ashamed because 70% of high school valedictorians are women. 56% of the top grades in colleges are gotten by women. MIT graduates 47% of the women in the engineering school. Where have all the women gone? I sit there scratching my head going, are they every place else except Silicon Valley says not good for us? Why are VCs not staffed with capable women? Because they claim that one of the reasons women don't get the funding is because VCs don't have women. So I think it's time to stop talking about these issues. I've never seen such scary numbers, scary in the sense of not their numbers. Somebody needs to sit down and say, okay, if we are going to start a program to enable women and minorities to really make a contribution in Silicon Valley, especially because a lot of the solutions you're developing are also supposed to help women and minorities, because it's supposed to help the world, as BJ said. The world includes women and minorities too. So I think that if you're really going to do it, you're going to have to deploy them in the company. And so as I read this report, all 70 pages of it, I have to tell you, it was depressing to say the least. And I think the time has come for, again, I leave it to you all. All of you have to get together to say, how are we going to intervene? What are we going to do to show that we're going to make progress? Because, you know, I sat in on a class with Laura Arrillaga Andreessen. She teaches at Stanford, a class that was brilliantly taught on women and the role of women and how women should be advancing. You know, Laura Arrillaga Andreessen through Andreessen Horowitz, or Mark Benioff was a very forward-thinking CEO. People like them should come together and say, how are we going to set up a dedicated fund that supports women, encourages them, coaches them, and makes the rest of the tech community look at women as talent, not as, God, they're women, they cannot contribute. I think there's too much of a bro culture in Silicon Valley, and you know, bro culture begets more broer culture, which begets more broest culture. So I think we've got work to do, Seema, big time work.
How do you survive in that bro culture? I mean, are there any experiences you can draw upon that you can share with us during your time as CEO of Pepsi for 12 years, moments where you think being a woman, being an Indian woman, an immigrant, did it at times make your job more challenging? And how did you get through that? How did you command the attention of other individuals who perhaps needed that level of recognition?
You know, it's interesting. I'd say you young people have it tougher than I did. And I'll tell you why. Because when I came into the workforce, you can think about it, when I graduated from IMCal, in my class there were only 6 or 7 women, because the dorm rooms only had 12 rooms for women. So the number of women admitted to IMCal was restricted by the number of rooms, which was only one floor with 12 rooms, so 6 women in each class. So we were looked at as an oddity, sort of unusual being. Let's be nice to them. It's good to have some women around. And most of the men came from IITs where there weren't many women. So we were viewed as, you know, they must be smart, they got into IMCal, and, you know, they provide some color to this place. So we were not viewed as competition. Today, with the numbers, you're viewed as competition. So you get muscled out of a lot of the, you know, activities, because natural bias comes into play because of competition. When I was growing up, people actually lent a helping hand to pull me up. If I think of every mentor I've had, if I did something that they thought was a little too extreme, they pulled me in, shut the door and said, hey, let me give you a suggestion. You might want to do things slightly differently, because I think you offended half the group in being so direct. Every stage of my life, you know, writing my book now, all of this coming to the fore, every stage in my life, somebody reached out, helped me, and made me a better person. Most of them are men, because that's all they were. Today, I think we need more mentors and supporters for the women. Now, there is no substitute for hard work yourself. I mean, I had to work my tail off, but I created my own hole, Seema. Every time I went, I thought I was in a hole. So I had to dig myself out of a hole and then perform. So I performed better than everybody else, because I always imagined I was in a hole, as an immigrant, as a woman, everything. And so there's no substitute for competence, but if you don't have mentors, supporters, people who believe in you, it's very hard to function. And I think in today's world, we need a lot more than what I had when I came into the workforce. So you guys, I'm in awe of all of you, because the world is much tougher for you now.
And you mentioned the instrumental role that mentorship played in your advancement. I'm curious, because even as the CEO of Pepsi, you mentored so many individuals that are now CEOs of major S&P 500 companies, Fortune 500 companies. If you look at Vivek Sankaran, who's now the CEO of Albertsons, we have Lakshmi Narasimhan, who's now the CEO of Reckitt Benckiser, who I interviewed a couple of months ago. How have you become such a great mentor? What is your advice to people who are on this call who want to know how they can be more effective at mentoring?
You know, if you asked them, when I was their boss, they thought I was incorrigible because I pushed and pushed and pushed them. I'd say to them, you can do more, you can do better. Um, when they brought something to me, I'd look at it, I'd read everything they gave me. There's nothing that they gave me that I wouldn't read, their work. I would read it, and then I'd send a note back saying, it's 55% of the way there. They're like, what the hell is 55% of the way there? I said, you can do more, you can do better. So I'd keep pushing them and moving the bar. But not just doing that. I'd call them in and say, let me tell you how you can go from 55 to much higher level. So I was there every step of the way to give them time, my input. So if you wanted to be mentored, I was there. If you choose not to have me be your mentor, tough. So every one of these 9 CEOs that I produced in the last 4 or 5 years, who are all running companies in the country today or in the world, I think every one of them said, we want to be mentored. It's painful. You're never happy with our work, but we'd rather have it this way than any other way. I mean, Vivek wrote me a note, I think a month ago saying, you know, you used to go home every day with 3 bags of mail. And I used to say to myself, why is she doing that? Is it to make an impression? But now I'm on my way home with my 3 bags of mail. And I know that, you know, being a CEO is tough. Thank you for showing me the way. So I think the real issue is you stay true to yourself. You tell the people that are working for you that they can do much more than they think they can because they've got the raw horsepower. You've got to draw it out of them, give them the confidence, give them the support, and the sky's the limit. People really dig deep when they think they're going to be supported.
What are some of the raw attributes that you look for in these now CEOs of these major companies that you said, wow, that really stands out to me. I can build upon that and make these individuals even better?
You know, the first thing is that if you become a CEO and you say, I've landed, I don't have to learn anymore, that's a big mistake. I think, in fact, the learning begins when you become a CEO. To me, the greatest CEOs have curiosity. If you lose that curiosity, what you'll find is that your knowledge atrophies over time. And many CEOs that I, admired ask questions. Even when you talk to them, you give them a nugget of information, they don't just say, oh, fine, thank you, and walk away. They'll ask you 5 other questions about what you told them. Those are the people that really impress me. People who have a core, a sense of purpose, that they want to change the world for the better, as opposed to, I just need to deliver my quarterly earnings and be done with it. That's fine, you have to do that as part of the job. But if you have a broader purpose, your people want to follow you. The company becomes a better place. People can bring their whole self to work. To me, I love leaders who have courage and confidence. You can be the greatest expert at a topic, but if you're a complete wimp about projecting confidence about it and talking about it and defending it, nobody's going to follow you. And to me, the other thing that I look for in all leaders, my fellow CEOs, can they communicate to bring their troops along? As a CEO, I'd say 3 or 4 times a day, I was communicating to some group of people, either to get them to do something they didn't want to do, but I thought was important, or to give them confidence, or to share with them something that I thought they should know about how to do their job better. So at every point in time, you've got to simplify the complex. You've got to put it in words that they can understand and makes it sing for them. And you've got to do it again and again and again. So you've got to fine-tune your communication skills, because if you don't do that, you cannot get hordes of people to follow you around the world.
Curious, your interest in curiosity, we all have it, but your fascination with it, does that come somewhat from your upbringing? A Brahmin Tamil community where I know education was very important, sort of pushing boundaries, transcending boundaries. Can you speak to how your upbringing played a role in how you led Pepsi and how you continue to lead?
I'm going to say something which is not going to be very popular with all of you, and that is, when we were growing up, the computer was really non-existent. There was no internet. And so we had to be curious, because everything came through books. We had to dig deeper and deeper and deeper ourselves. We might not have had as breadth of information as you have today by just doing a search, but we had to dig a lot. And so, in a world where we don't have 50 different things that take our attention, you could get curious about the few things that you're working on. I watch my kids. I mean, they've got too many distractions, way too many distractions, too many channels, too many programs they have to keep up. The FOMO fear is just too much. And so, we didn't have any of that. So in a way, we grew up at a time which was slow. We didn't have technology. So curiosity is what got us through. We were curious about everything. And if we were not, our grandparents would say, why didn't you ask a question about that? You pretended you knew the answer. So there was somebody at home always pushing us to be curious. That skill of curiosity that was fine-tuned in the 60s and 70s growing up never leaves you. So today, any issue that comes up, I'm consuming material from the right and the left and the center and digging deep into everything to form my own perspective, as opposed to taking already pre-digested material and saying, that's what it must be. So that's where the curiosity comes from.
That's a great story. We have one question from the audience, Indra, that I'd like to ask you. How will we address the impact of technology right now with 6 to 12 months, but the question from our audience is, how will the role of technology affect our society 20 to 50 years from now? Sort of your longer term view here.
Look, I don't know about 20 to 50 because things that I thought were going to take a decade are happening in 6 months. So it's very hard to project the curve because things are happening on a different scale than even I expect, or whatever. All that I know is that if there's anything in our society today where there's a friction point, there's somebody working on a technology solution for that. So that's the positive. I think in every way possible, I see little friction points all being addressed, life being made easier, and more integration of different parts of our life so that there's seamless connectivity from home to work to living, all of that stuff. So that's the good part. The part that I'm worried about is, I think anonymity is gone, privacy is gone. And I don't think it's going to take 20 years. It's already almost gone. I think over the next few years, with the launch of smart cities, facial recognition, AI becoming much more ubiquitous, I think that there is going to be no privacy. And that's going to be a big issue. Having grown up in a world where there was privacy because there wasn't much technology, I think the next generation, the next 2 generations have to think hard about privacy and its implications and tracking and where's your data being monetized and how is it being used. I think these are all issues that the tech world is to sit down and think about. And then finally, again, I'm not talking 10 or 20 years because I don't have a crystal ball to see that far. I just want to make sure tech looks at the harmful consequences of what they're doing. Seriously, I mean, I don't want to pontificate on what I think is harmful today, but there's just too much of tech that also has harmful consequences. And so I think it's very important that before it gets too late, somebody sits down and says, is what we're doing through a technological solution which was developed with good intent, doing something bad to society? And how do we pull it back? And if that doesn't happen, we could have a society that we cannot recognize.
You think 20 years from now, Indra, we'll have more female CEOs, more minority women at the board level? Well, what's your prognosis? And is this something that you address in your upcoming book?
Well, I'm going to talk about what it's going to take to get them there, not just in tech, although tech has got a bigger challenge than most. What I don't want, Seema, let me put it this way. I would love to see more women and diverse people in tech, but I don't want them to be in tech giving up families and having children, for anybody who wants to have a family, because we do need to have children to keep society going. So my hope is that tech wakes up and says, how do we get representation? How do we provide families with the care and flexibility? And how do we eliminate bias? If those 3, legs of the stool can be addressed, I think tech could become more inclusive, and I think tech could be richer. Tech could, emerge a better industry, even better than it is today. I mean, it's awesome today, but it could be even better going into the future.
You spoke about the work-life balance in the past, about how it's sort of hard to do, but perhaps even more so now, right? I mean, we know this, being a mom at home and also helping your kids learn and make sure that they're attending their classes and being a mom at home while you work from home, it's gotten even harder to manage.
Yeah, you know, they talked about the woman doing a second shift. Now she's doing a third and a fourth shift. Although we're also seeing great examples of, for the first time, equal participation by both parents in, you know, bringing up the child and teaching the child. I think we've got to make it more normal for both parents to be involved in all of these issues. I think this traditional historical perspective of the role of the woman, the role of the man, all of those have got to be blurred. I think women need economic and financial freedom. They must have economic and financial freedom. And, you know, I think both genders should sit down and say, you know, especially when you get married, sit down and say, you know, how are we going to divvy up the responsibility at home? And there's going to have to be give and get, but, you know, those conversations need to be had. I was lucky that I'm married to somebody for over 40 years who believed that we were equal partners in this journey. And I couldn't have survived without the involvement of my husband, who, you know, moved with me, in fact, encouraged me to move, giving up his job, you know, was successful in his job, but more importantly, played a mammoth role in bringing up our kids.
Wow, and it's such a good reminder, right, to have that level of support. That partner in crime can really help both individuals thrive then in their respective environments.
Yeah. And, you know, we as women have to let go of perfection too, you know. Some things just won't be okay, but that's okay, live with it.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
Some time ago you referred to the Tam brands, and I tell you, growing up, we didn't have to worry about fashion, how we looked. Our clothes were always mismatched. Our furniture at home was non-existent or mismatched. Our focus was on education and doing well and doing a job well. Today, you've got so many things you have to worry about that you don't have much time to focus on, you know, the core. So the real question is, if you want to have everything, man, there's only 24 hours in a day, unless the tech world can make the day 48 hours. That's also possible. I don't know what else you guys can do, but it's not working within 24 hours.
Yeah, striving for that simplicity in this complex world and having those priorities and sticking to them. I hear you. Indra, this was a wide-ranging conversation. Really appreciate your time today discussing everything you're seeing from your prism when it comes to the economy, how the consumer is changing, and advice for women that are trying to create and carve their path forward. Thank you, Indra.
Thank you. Thank you, Seema, and thank you for having me. Good luck to you all. Bye-bye.
Indra Nooyi.